Hello gorgeous people, how are you all doing today? I hope you are well. I think I am. Hang on, pinch, just check. No, all this fine. I just feel really wiped out after that really annoying bug. Never mind, it just means getting on with things at a slightly slower pace. Let's not rush. Never mind any of that. I've got 3 fab little books to tell you about today. Gosh, they couldn't be more different. Tutankhamun, a murder mystery, Antarctica. Let's dive straight in. Let's have a quick chat about Tutankhamun. Let me grab my notes out from inside it. This was a really random parcel turned up from Diane, thank you lovely, containing this book. Oh, and some chocolate. Chocolate's long since gone. This is actually a kid's book. I suppose it would be aimed at, I'm not sure what age, 12, 13, maybe even 14, maybe even for, you know, a good reader, maybe 10 or 11. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's for kids. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a tiny dinky little book. I read it one night. I couldn't sleep. I was having my usual lack of sleep. Let me just see. There's about 137 pages. Yeah. I started it because it was about 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep and I thought, oh, I'll have a quick look because it's going to be an easy read because it is essentially aimed at young people. And then I couldn't put it down. What a romp. Fab. So it's their series of books called Double Take. 2 sides, 1 story. So it's, obviously the title gives it away, Tutankhamun's tomb. It's all about that period around the early 20s with the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The archaeologist, the digger, Howard Carter, his backer, Lord Carnarvon. It was such a fab romp. There were things in this, I discovered new things, and I loved that. I was expecting to just flick through this, you know, oh, it's a kid's book, whatever. But I really tucked into it and enjoyed it. Discovered new things, like I said, which is fab. And on reflection, I was thinking about how this came as a result. I'd been talking about that exhibition that I'd seen in Dorset all those years ago. It was a travelling exhibition of replicas of all the treasures. And just as a kid, I was utterly fascinated by Egyptology, fascinated by mummies, pharaohs, the tombs, all of it was just, it seemed so mysterious and magical to me. So I think that's why Diane sent the book. But everything I've sort of read and documentaries I've watched, it's all been about after the discovery of the tomb. It's all been about speculation about how did Tutankhamun die. That's been speculated on for years. Every now and again some new research will be done, they'll have a new technique. So it's all been very much about post finding the tomb. It's all been about examining the treasure, examining the mummy, etc, etc. So this was a great little read to sort of fill in those gaps, because I had known some of the background in terms of Carnarvon was at the point, they'd been searching for I think 5 or 6 years, and Lord Carnarvon had said, right, that's it, I'm going to cut the money off, we're not getting anywhere, let's give up, we're not going to find anything. And Carter sort of begged and pleaded, just one more season, and it was in that one more season when the tomb was found. So I knew that sort of stuff. But the details in between, because it was actually, I think it was something like 2 full years before they actually had everything out. It took a long time to get those first treasures out. So for me, that was great. It was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And what I loved about this kind of double take thing is we get the story from Carter's perspective and some notes from his diaries, letters, that sort of thing. And then we get the same part of the story told from Carnarvon's point of view. So we get his diaries, his letters, and they don't always agree. There was definitely tension between them. So it's wonderful having those contemporary diary extracts to read. And that's what I mean. I think although it's aimed at young people, why not as an adult read it? So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and what I really liked in terms of how they've edited the book together is at the end of each chapter there's a bit of a cliffhanger. It's, you know, there's a question of like, would they finally break through to the tomb room with the next, you know, in the next days, or, you know, how long would it be? So at the end of each chapter it's like, what's going to happen? Sorry, excuse me, I need to, itchy nose. Yeah, there's a sense of what's going to happen, what's next. Oh, I can't wait. You know, keep digging, keep crack through into that next room. Ooh. So my excitement was almost that of my inner child coming out. And like I said, I ended up staying up all night to read it. Not all night. It's like an hour and a half or so. Let me just see, what notes did I write down? Oh, so for instance, when they get to the actual burial tomb, this is one of the things I hadn't known. I had no idea that there were 8 layers, like a Russian doll. I knew that within the, once it got the final sarcophagus open, that within it there was a coffin, but that was then layered, and I think there were 3 layers with the coffin before they actually get to the mummy. But I'd had no idea that it was 8 layers, and that the first is sort of 3 meters high. I had no idea of the size, etc., etc. So yeah, it was fun for me to, let's see, yeah, it was fun for me to discover. I've written here, nail biting. It took 1 year and 3 months for the sarcophagus lid to finally be taken off. So yeah, utterly nail biting. This book also goes into all the shenanigans of the press, as in newspapers, the press, the politics around things. So I think yeah, for a young person who's into the subject, what a great read, with a bit more depth than perhaps they've seen in their encyclopedias or what have you. And as an adult reading it, oh, you see, this was another thing I hadn't known. I hadn't known that there'd been 2 previous robberies of the tomb. It all added to the intrigue. So yeah, a great book for young people, but you know what, never mind. I mean, look, if I'd seen that on a shelf in a bookshop, I don't think I would have picked it up. So thank you, Diane. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's something about treasure, isn't there? There's something about buried treasure which doesn't it spark something in all of us? And from a really, really young age, I think even when we are 4 or 5-year-old kids, I think the concept, the idea of buried treasure is something we learn about really, really young, don't we? Whether it's because of pirates or, you know, Tutankhamun or other forms of archaeology, metal detectoring. I think from an early age, that idea of buried treasure just gets woven into us somehow. I honestly, I think if you asked a bunch of 7 or 8-year-old kids to draw a treasure map, they'd know exactly what you mean, and they'd get on with it and they'd draw it. And they'd draw an island and maybe some trees and maybe a ship in the sea and maybe a sort of north-south, a bit of a compass symbol, and there'd be an X. They'd draw an X on the map. X marks the spot. So yeah, I think right from a young age, so many of us are captivated by the idea of buried treasure. And for some of us, that intrigue, that excitement, it never goes away. And even to things like, and this refers to a book I'm currently reading, which I'll bring you in another video. You know, simple things like beachcombing and mudlarking, that idea of finding a lost treasure, whether it's, you know, a Roman coin or a message in a bottle washed up on a beach. I'm getting ahead of myself to the book I'm currently on. So yeah, I think anyone who has ever got excited by the prospect of buried treasure, if you see a copy, pick it up, have a quick, excuse me, have a quick read one rainy afternoon or in the middle of the night if you can't sleep. Okay, on to my next one. Sorry, I should have said it was written by MacDonald. I was just so focused on Tutankhamun and Carter and Carnarvon. Yeah, great fun. I really, yeah, just to reiterate, I really loved all the suspense and the cliffhangers that MacDonald has written into that. And I think, you know, it's in a sort of the old-fashioned style of Enid Blyton and more recently, say, Harry Potter, because most of those chapters end on, you know, intrigue about what's about to happen next, and it encourages you to read another chapter. Just one more chapter, just one more chapter. Please, Mom, one more chapter, don't turn the lights off. Okay, right, on to, just grab my next, a murder mystery. Once again, this is from the British Library Crime Classics series. So most of the books in this series, I think they're written between the 20s and the 60s, 1920s to 1960s. They're sort of classics that have gone out of print, so British Library are republishing them. I've read a few now. It's all my sister's fault. She got me into this. So when I saw this one, Death of an Author, I thought, well, come on, I've got to have a look at that. The author is E.C.R. Lorac. Lorac. Not a name I knew at all. And therein gives us a big chunk of what the sort of themes this book plays with. We don't know, is Lorac a woman or a man? We have no idea. Does it even matter? Does it matter? If you read a book, you enjoy it, it doesn't matter whether it's been written by a man or a woman, does it? So the premise of this book, we start off at a publishing house and we have writer, we'll call him Mr. A. Writer Mr. A comes to visit his publisher and chat with them, and he says, I really fancy writing some detective fiction. He hasn't written detective fiction till then. I really fancy having a go at doing some detective fiction. And the publishers say, oh, don't bother, detective fiction, it's really throwaway. You won't get any respect for writing detective fiction. It's pretty much, it's a bit rubbish. But writer A says, yeah, but writer B, and he takes a copy off the shelf, has had so much success with writing detective fiction, I really want to have a go. So straight away there's a sense of Lorac being a bit tongue-in-cheek with us, that it's almost like Lorac is having a dig at the world of reviewers and publishers and all that, because here Lorac is writing detective fiction, and right at the beginning is saying, one of the characters is saying, detective fiction is rubbish. I like this. I like it straight away. Oh, you're having a dig at your own genre, and maybe is that because people have had a dig at you? So it's quite complicated. It's not complicated once you're reading it, and I want to tell you about it without giving anything away, as usual. So writer B, so we've got writer A is in the office. Writer A says, I really want to meet writer B. I want to find out, I want to know who this person is. I want to find out all about them and their writing. Because writer B is famously a recluse. No one has ever seen writer B. So writer A says to the publisher, please, 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 can you arrange a meet-up? I'd love to meet writer B. And then they go on to have a discussion about writer B has a name. Writer B is actually called Vivian. The name is, what's the whole name? Vivian Lestrange. It's actually spelled Vivian with an A, which is the masculine spelling rather than my spelling, which is an E. So they have a little bit of a debate, and again, this really sets up the whole book, and Lorac is really letting us know. Because writer A says that this detective writer, Vivian Lestrange, it must be a man. Because surely a woman can't write that sort of thing. So it opens up this whole debate about gender, really, about what women can do, what men can do, and that they're different, they're going to write differently. A woman can't possibly write this kind of stuff because it's, you know, it's a man's world. And it was at that point I thought, I want to find out a bit more about the actual author, Lorac. And it turns out Lorac is a woman. So here's a woman, a female writer, writing about detective fiction where characters are saying detective fiction is rubbish and women can't write like that. Women can't write detective fiction. And here we are, this is a woman writing detective fiction. So that gets played a lot on throughout the whole book. Oh, let me see, what can I say without giving it away? Let me quickly look at my notes. Yeah, there's a lot of references to a woman can't have done that, and there's a sort of sense of it's too good for a woman to have done. I just wanted to try to get my thoughts in order. Yeah, I'm going to read you a little passage in a second, but just back to this notion of a woman not being able to write that crime fiction. It also sort of goes into the idea of how could a woman write that? How could she conceive that story? And the author then, it's sort of like a mirror back to ourselves. If a writer can conceive that story, could they actually do the crime? Are we all capable of doing that sort of crime? We read these books, we enjoy them. What does that mean? But it's more to do with the whole... Sorry, I'm flummoxed suddenly. The whole book is about identity. Gender comes into it, but identity is everything, because who is this author, this reclusive author? We are led to believe there's a plot twist right at the beginning where it's like, it's a woman after all, or is it? So the identities are continually shifting, and the whole sort of the hunting down of the whodunit, it's all about the sort of the tricks of identity. I'm not articulating very well today. I think I'm still a bit hungover from that kind of coldy bug thing I had. How can you chase down a villain if you don't know who the villain is? Or you think you know who the villain is, but was the villain always imaginary? Did the villain ever exist? Yeah, it chops and changes and chops and changes. And there are two sort of detectives on the case. And one of them takes a real dislike to this Vivian Lestrange's secretary. But the other detective nails down why he doesn't like her. And the reason he takes a dislike to her is because he can't pin her down. He can't put a label on her. She's sort of like, is she this? Is she that? I don't know what she is. And because he can't label her, it annoys him. So there's this great passage. He says, "You know the womanly woman, the obvious bad lot, the shoplifting type and the hardened harridan, always drunk of an evening. Miss Clark is a bit of a blue stocking, the modern intellectual who meets a man on equal terms and admits not his superiority, nor yet panders to it. You're irritated because you can't place her in your experience, that's all." And that also gives a clue to the book as well. It's always about remembering, when was this book written? When was it written? I've forgotten already. Sorry, it was a couple of weeks ago I read it. 1935. So we've got these themes as well of women and equality and... Right, I shan't go on about any more about that because actually it's a really good yarn. The whole way through we're kind of guessing, trying to work out the identity of this recluse, and also does this author even exist at all? Maybe the secretary, Miss Clark, maybe she's the author. Who knows? Who knows? And right at the end, obviously, we get the denouement moment where all is revealed. And I had it completely right. I had it completely the other way around. But yeah, fun. Just playing with identity, real people, imagined people. Could it be a woman? Could it be a man? Are there clues which mean it can't possibly be a woman? It must be a man because of X, Y, and Z. And do we gender stereotype so much that we can't conceive of a woman having a mind that could come up with these things? Fab. Of course, you know, that period as well. Excuse me, we just have to look at, you know, Agatha Christie, for goodness sakes. We know a woman can. Right, now for a complete shift in tone and pace and coming more into my wheelhouse. And it's the last of my Christmas present books. This was from Martin and Michelle at Christmas. Empire Antarctica. Ice, Silence and Emperor Penguins by Gavin Francis. Loved it. Wasn't really sure what to expect. I thought, oh, is this going to be all about Emperor Penguins? It's not. I mean, they feature a lot. In a nutshell, Gavin Francis is a doctor. He trained as a doctor. I don't know how old he was when he wrote this. It was published in 2012. He's right at the start of his career. That's the important thing. He's right at the start of his career and he's wondering which direction to take. Now, going back a bit, as a young lad, he really gets into bird watching and becomes a really quite keen ornithologist. He also, like so many of us, develops for no quite discernible reason a bit of a fascination with the cold places, the polar regions, and has a bit of it's not so much a dream as a fantasy of, oh, one day he'd like to go to Antarctica to look at the emperor penguins. And that's two of his favourite things: birds, cold places. And then one of the British Antarctic Survey stations, the station called Halley, it's sort of on the northish side. North? That doesn't make sense because it's underneath. If you're looking at a map, how to describe it's the bit of Antarctica. If you were to go directly north, you'd sort of hit South Georgia. If you went slightly northwest, you'd hit the Falklands, the bottom tip of South America. He's that side. That station, they need a doctor for the year. So he applies and he gets the gig. So he's off to Antarctica for a whole year. Now, where he's going to be, it's only accessible by ship for 2 months of the year in the Antarctic summer. For the other 10 months, it's completely cut off. Yeah, it's just completely cut off. It's a terrifying prospect to me. So yeah, he gets the gig, and this whole book is about his year there. It includes his travel down there on the ship. Shackleton is the ship that takes him there, and his sort of building anticipation. But it's a lot to do, the whole book is a lot to do with psychology. I am going to have to refer to my notes. I made a lot of notes. because this book covers so much. Like I said, it's not just about the penguins. It's really beautifully written because so many different things weave in and out of his writing. So in a way, it's almost sort of like it's not written in diary form, but it's sort of his diary of the year, of arriving in summer, getting to know the place, getting to know his teammates who are going to be the overwinterers, really small gang of them, getting to know firstly his work there, but also the work he will help with, because everyone has to pitch in with everything. We sort of head into winter, his experience of winter. So this book covers Antarctic exploration history. So throughout the book, we get woven in there are the stories that, if you are into this region, you'll already know. Stories of Scott, stories of Shackleton, stories of Cherry-Apsey Garrard, all those kind of famous sort of almost hero tales, aren't they? And he also goes into, at times throughout the book, he explores why all those stories have become so mythical. Almost, they have taken on mythical status. And even today, heads of companies, CEOs, they refer to Shackleton. People look at Shackleton as a leader. What's he got? How can we, let's put this into our business training. So he explores all that. And for me, it's wonderful to hear those stories again, sad to hear some of the stories again. But yeah, why do those stories endure? Why do they inspire us so much? As they have me. Those stories, when I was reading those stories for the first time, probably when I was 14 or 15, why did they inspire a lifetime of, at times, almost obsessive reading on the subject? So that comes into it. The penguins, of course, are a big part of this book. Their behaviour, their physiology. Great stuff. There are a couple. The reason I was hesitating then was just to say, in case anyone is interested, there is one section in which he describes in quite a bit of detail a dissection of a dead chick. So some people may find that a bit like, I'm utterly fascinated by the physiology. So for me, that was really, really engrossing and interesting. But yeah, just be warned, it's towards the end of the book. So if anyone's a bit, when you get to that little section, if you're not into that, just skip it. But all sorts more, cloud knowledge of clouds. He starts to learn, because of course on the base, he's the doctor, but he's surrounded by all these amazingly, brilliantly skilled people in their different fields, physicists, engineers. And it's lovely this year of, I'm a bit jealous actually, because he mucks in with everybody at that camp. I just call it a camp, it's not a campsite, it's buildings on stilts. But yeah, he's watching, he's observing, he's learning from them, he's mucking in with them, he's helping. So he's gaining all these different bits of knowledge and skills, and watching the clouds and understanding the clouds. He gets into that stargazing. Of course, we get a bit of stargazing. We get a bit about indigenous peoples of other regions. If we think, say, Inuit, Norse, about their gods in terms of like the stars, and the fact that he spends so much of the time in this perpetual darkness during winter. There's a lot of it goes into psychology. Let me see what I wrote about. So the psychology of isolation, the psychology of confinement, the psychology of sensory deprivation. That's fascinating. I particularly was interested in, it's only a small bit, but he talks about because they've got 24 hours of dark in the winter, 24 hours of light in the summer. Talking about our own body clocks. It was a really interesting section. And he talks about it's something I'd like to look up a bit more on, because I've not ever heard about it before. And I think, does that maybe explain things for me a bit? That most of us have a 24-hour-ish body clock. Most of us will sleep, as light fades, we get that message, it's time to sleep. So 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we start to get tired. We put ourselves to bed, we go to sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours. But for some people, the clock is off. Now there's two different things. There's, and the French philosopher had it, was it Pascal who had this? Delayed sleep phase, where most people would be triggered to go to sleep at, say, 10 o'clock in the evening. People with delayed sleep phase, that trigger might not go off until 3 or 4 in the morning. So you're wide awake, and this is what I experienced, being truly wide awake. And not just like, I'm awake because I'm watching a movie, but wide awake, active, bright, at my kind of most bright at 3 in the morning. But back to this book, he talks about this whole body clock thing, and there's been a lot of research, of course, done on folks who've overwintered at Antarctica, any of the Antarctic stations, of the effects, those psychological effects of, the confinement, the sensory deprivation, the isolation, but also on the 24 hours of darkness, 24 hours of light. And like I said, he just briefly for a moment talked about this body clock that most folk have of 24 hours. That some people seem to have a 23-hour clock. Some people seem to have a 25-hour clock. But some people, and I think this is what I am, seem to have what is called a free running clock, where if you were to deprive of light and all that kind of sensory clues and what have you, that clock just is haywire. One day that clock might work for 10 hours, as in sleep for 3 hours, work for 5 hours. And then other times that clock may run to being awake for 36 hours and then sleeping for 14 hours. That 24 hours is out of the window. Anyway, so I thought that was really interesting. I'd like to read up on that more for myself. In other words, it's far-ranging in subject. Of course, Antarctica is at the centre of it all. And almost every paragraph, even if he might be talking about something in the past, Shackleton, Scott, he might be talking about the penguins today, he might be talking about psychology, he might be talking about physics, clouds, storms. But always, always, always are his descriptions of the landscape. And you might think, how can you write a book fat, thick, describing ice and the sky? He's so articulate. He manages both to describe this physical landscape and with such a rich vocabulary that it's ever changing. So he describes both the landscape, that physical landscape, but somehow it manages to also describe in the same moment his inner landscape, that his sort of feelings and his awe, his fears. It's beautiful. It's a very rich book. It's rich of his internal landscape for that whole year, but also rich for what is all around him. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. a fascinating lyrical account of one of the strangest places on earth and its majestic inhabitants. Absolutely. An extraordinary book, lyrical, precise, intoxicating, and with a remarkable spiritual depth. That's what I mean. Thank you, Gavin Francis, for being so articulate. I just kept getting the sense that this is a man who is intellectually, he's brilliant. He's so well read in such a wide range of subjects as well. So, you know, you think, oh, he's a doctor, that's science. But the arts, literature, past literature, amazing. So at once we feel we're in the presence of someone who is, you know, really intellectual man, well read, etc. But also, more than anything, a sense of this is a man with a deep pool of inner life. Yeah, I'm a bit stumped. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Sorry, I was just getting lost in it. I've written notes to myself. I won't describe them on here because for anyone who's squeamish, but I've just written a note on the back of my notes here about the dissection. There was something I found particularly fascinating when he was doing the dissection, but I will save any squeamish folk from that. I highly recommend Empire, Antarctica, Ice, Silence and Emperor Penguins. And I would say as well, for anyone watching who thinks, oh, I've never been interested in Scott Shackleton, Apsy Cherry Garrard, and Apsy Cherry Garrard, I always get it the wrong way. Anyway, for anyone who's never really been interested in Antarctic exploration, that sort of thing, I would still say read it, because it's not about that exploration. It's about being somewhere that... It's about the impact of place. One of the things, I forgot to say, was right at the beginning of the book, when he's really early on in his career, one of the reasons he's attracted to going is because he wants to see what will happen if he can still his mind, if he can quieten his mind. He wants an opportunity for stillness, quiet, solitude, to see, will he be able to get his thoughts straight? Will he be able to think about his future life? Will he be able to plan his future life if he can just quieten everything down? So he's a man, he's obviously aware of his own psychological needs as well, but we see throughout the book how he becomes more and more and more self-aware from that point of view. It's really brilliant. It's a beautiful book. They've put it much more succinctly and better than me. Lyrical, precise, intoxicating, and with a remarkable spiritual depth. My tummy's rumbling, I need to go and get lunch. Highly recommend it. So, what a mixed bunch. Great fun, buried treasure. Who doesn't love buried treasure? Aimed at kids, but as a quick midnight read, whatever, for a grown-up. If you like the subject, fun. I mean, who doesn't enjoy a whodunit? Kept me guessing right to the end, and I got it wrong. I don't usually get it so completely wrong, but I did, and I loved all the themes about it can't be a woman, or does the whole... I felt that the author, Lorac, the whole thing was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek jab at the world of newspapers and reviewers and what have you, who decide what women can and can't write, and the whole idea of crime fiction not being worthy of attention. Great fun. That mesmerising, beautiful, at times moving. I read it quite slowly. There were many times I just put the book down, closed my eyes and just let the thoughts drift around for a while. Loved it. Martin and Michelle, thank you for 2 fantastic, perfectly picked, perfectly pitched books for Christmas. last year. Thank you. All right, lovelies, my tummy is rumbling like mad. I need some food. So I will see you all again really soon, I hope. Excuse me. I cannot wait to tell you about the book I'm currently reading. Let's just say it's about beachcombing. I am racing through it and I'm telling myself, slow down, Vivi, slow down. It's like I've got a bowl of really, really yummy food and I'm just, it's like I've got my next spoonful ready before I've even chewed this mouthful because it's so yummy. I want to scoff it all in one go. But it's so lovely, I think, yeah, slow down to enjoy it for longer, because otherwise I'm going to scoff the whole bowl in 10 minutes and then I'll really miss it. So I can't wait to tell you about that in a couple of weeks or so. Right, that's it, over and out. I'll see you all again really soon. What's coming up next, I've no idea. Whatever it is, I will see you for that when that happens, whatever that is. Until then, stay well, please. I know some of you are a bit lurgified too. I hope you're shaking it off by now. If you're not, what could be better than curling up on the sofa under a quilt with a book and a mug of something? This is just water, but a mug of, I don't know, hot lemon or something. Look after yourselves. Till the next one, cheerio.